Okay. So if I'm on the back end of the site, there's only one place that we can access forms through. So that makes it pretty straightforward. And that's just our Forms tab at the top up here. And then we're going to go to Form List.
Okay.
Now, we're going to be covering a lot of information today, but I am recording it. I'll send you the recording, and I've got some additional resources I can send as well.
Okay. Can I quickly ask you for your suggestions? Because sometimes I'll try to write a few things down, but I know that we have the recording because I've listened to them from our previous class to kind of help me when I'm working through some of those sheets. Do you think it's best I just look at the screen and pay attention and not worry about writing anything down? Because I can see it.
That's a good question. I agree with you. I think it would be more beneficial if you watch this, because I think what happens is when my clients try to write things down, I think they are missing what's happening on the screen. You can always go back and re-listen. And of course you could re-watch it as well, but I think it helps to have the visual during the training.
Okay, I just wanted to hear that.
Of course. All right. So when we're on our form list, this is going to be a list of all the forms that we've created for you in the system and that you will create. So moving forward, you'll always want to create new forms for every event that you have. So if you guys had a conference, you wouldn't want to use the same conference registration for 2018 that you did in 2017, because every form is tracking how many submissions you get, how many people are coming, and you'll be able to send that information as well as create exports from the system on that information. So if they're all combined in the same form submissions, it's just not going to really help you send targeted emails, have appropriate spreadsheets for conferences, things like that.
Okay.
So it'll be important to create different forms for every event that you have. Now, of course, you can use the same membership application over and over. You can use these same, probably the same contribution forms. You could probably use the same donation forms. The only biggie would be for events, luncheons, conferences, sponsorships, partnerships, anything like that.
Okay.
Since you'll be creating so many forms in the system, you're going to wind up with a lot of forms in here. They'll always be listed alphabetically.
Okay.
You have a search bar up here in the top right-hand corner. You can search for your forms. And then if there's a form that you're no longer using, you can change the status to archived.
Okay.
Once you've archived a form, you will not be able to see it unless you check this Show Archived Forms box up here at the top. If you select that box.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
Yeah. If you select that box, it'll bring up those archive forms, and you can always republish them. But that way, your form list isn't cluttered with items that you're not using anymore.
Exactly.
Now, if we hover over our forms, we have a couple of different selections that we can choose from. So these three horizontal dots give us the option to delete our forms or copy our forms. Now, copy is going to be your best friend, because I mentioned you're going to need to have new forms for every event that you have go on. So instead of having to start from scratch every time, you can just copy an existing form and then just make a couple tweaks within the form, and it's ready to go.
Okay.
Deleting forms, I can delete this form right now because there are 0 form submissions. But the second that there's a form submission for this form, I will no longer be able to delete it. Okay. So the reason why is because we use forms to collect information from your members and store it in their profile. And so if we deleted the form that somebody submitted, we're mass deleting all that information that the form collected, which is a big no-no, right? So instead, to prevent you from ever accidentally mass deleting information, we just take away the ability for you to delete the form.
Okay.
We can also take this form. So what this means is somebody may be driving down the road and call you up and say, hey, Cheryl, I really want to make a donation. I just haven't had time to get online. Can you just do this for me really fast? And you're going to say, yeah, sure. You're going to come in here. You're going to select take this form. It's going to bring up everybody in your database. And from that database list, you'll be able to search for the individual who called you, select their name, and you're going to proceed as that individual. So this is basically allowing you to take the form for them. That's going to keep the form submission in their profile. If there's an invoice that needs to be created, it's going to create the invoice and send it out to them. You'll be able to search by this information. So you always want to make sure that you're taking the form on behalf of somebody, so that you're able to keep that historical information in their profile. If it's somebody that is new, you can proceed as a new profile, and that's going to create a new profile for them simultaneously as filling out the form. You may have some paper copies of your membership application floating around, so you may at some point get a paper membership application. Same thing, you're going to come into the system, take the membership application, proceed as a new profile, and fill it out for them. Same concept, it'll create the invoice for them and send it to them all in just one kind of fail swoop. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. This looks really nice too. We didn't have anything like this with the former database. I mean, I really like the looks of this.
Awesome. Good, good. Now, lastly, we can edit our forms. That's going to bring us into the form builder, and we're going to dive into the form builder in just a moment. Same kind of thought process, though, as the leading forms. So if you've been collecting your members' birth dates, you're not going to be able to go into the form and take away that birthday field because it's been used. If there's a submission, it was used to collect information and store in members' profiles. So if you deleted it, you'd mass delete that information, right? It's the same thing as deleting. Once there's a field that's been filled out in a form, you can't take it away. But on the opposite of that, if you haven't been collecting your members' birth, you want to collect your members' birth dates, you can always go into the form and add a field. So you wouldn't be able to edit by taking anything out, but you can edit by adding stuff and putting more stuff in. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. Now, if we want to create a new form, we're going to come up to the top of our editor and select Create a Form.
Okay.
We would add the form name. Now, the form name is totally internal, so you can put whatever in here that will help you understand what this form is being used for in this area, because like I said, this is internal. Nobody else will see it but you.
Okay.
Then we're going to tell our system what type of form we're creating. By default, there are different form sections that are already built in to every form that you create. So there will always be a login section. There will always be a summary section where they can summarize the information they provided. There will always be a payment section, and there will always be an information section. So those are built into every form in the system. What can change is the body of the form. The body of the form determines what type of form we're creating. We have three options. There can either be a membership application body of our form, an event registration body of our form, or just a general section for the body of our form. By checking the appropriate boxes at this stage of making the form, we're telling them what type of form we're creating so that it pulls in the appropriate body of the form for us, and we don't have to do it manually.
Okay.
So if we're creating a membership application, we're going to check and say this is used for membership. That's going to allow the system to bring in the membership section of the form.
Okay.
If we're creating a form for an event registration, we're going to check that this form is being used for event registration. That's going to tell the system to automatically bring that body into the form.
Okay.
We could technically use this for both. So it could be, the form could be used for a membership application and an event registration form. Maybe somebody has to be a member before they can register for an event. That's an example of what you would use that. Or if you're not creating a membership application or an event registration form, you'll check neither. So at that point, you would bring in a general form. So if you're creating any other type of form, just leave this piece blank, and we're going to bring in a general section.
Okay, so the general section would come in on its own just by me not clicking on either of those two tabs.
You do have to manually bring it in. It leaves a blank space. You can manually bring in any of these sections, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you ever mess this piece up, it's not the end of the form, right? You can always go back in there and edit it manually, and I'll show you how to do that today.
Okay.
After we've decided what type of form we're creating, we've named our form, we're going to select Save, and at that point, it's going to bring us into the form builder. I'm going to go ahead and select Edit to go inside of your membership application. It also takes us into the form builder.
Okay.
Any questions so far?
No, the first are good.
All right, awesome. I'm just bringing up your form. Where is it? I saw it just a moment ago. There we go. Okay. All right. So our form builder is comprised of a left-hand column and a right-hand column.
Okay.
The right-hand column, I like to think of it as just our rough draft. So it's what the form will look like, but it's just not in your template yet. It's not pretty yet, but it's going to reflect all the fields that would reflect to your members when they're going through the form.
Okay. So this is kind of a generic way of how the form would look.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I mentioned earlier that there are some built-in sections in the form. I said the first built-in section is the law section. So that's what we see here. Each section is going to be in its own white box. And then when that white box ends and you see a new tab, that's where the new section begins.
Okay.
So we have our login section. The login section you will always want to use. The reason why is because the login section is what recognizes the member. So it'll take the information that you're asking them on the form and save it in their member profile. Vice versa, if they've been an existing member, it'll auto-populate any fields that you're asking of them. So if you already have that information, they don't have to fill it out again.
Okay.
This is also going to be what saves this form submission in their profile, which you could later search by. So it's really important to have the login section on. The only reason you might not want a login section is if you are sending out like a survey and you need anonymous submissions back.
Okay, so let me just ask quickly. So in this form setting, the login, it says for the members, what will I have to go in to do to make sure that everything is in there for them properly? How will what am I going to have to actually do to tweak it to make sure that all of the elements and things are there for them?
We're getting there.
Okay, all right, okay.
We're getting there.
Okay, all right.
I'm doing like kind of a macro, and then we'll get to the micro level.
Okay.
Now for the login section, for every section, I should say, there's going to be a properties button that we can select. Selecting a properties button will then reflect on the left-hand side what we can change or edit about that specific item on the form. In this case, I selected properties for the login section. So this is letting me know what can I do to the login section to customize it.
Okay.
So I mentioned in the beginning when I filled out the name of the form and I said it was a membership application. When I filled the name out and I said it was intern, this is not the name that they'll see.
Okay.
They will see whatever name is on the tab of the section. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this will be what I see inside, but the members won't.
They would just see whatever name is on every tab of every section. So in this case, the first section that they come to, they'll see login. Login, it may not be specific enough. So you may want to say login for our membership application. You may need to spell it out a little bit more for your members.
Okay.
And then you'll see that that's going to reflect on our tab. So now this is what they would see when they begin the form.
Yeah, and that's just what I want to make it simple for them. So
you said you would want to make it simple for them?
Yeah, I like what you did. That's just how I would have login membership application, so they know exactly what it is. So I would leave that, but on the tabs, that's what I'll do. I'll make sure I spell it out for them.
Exactly. Here's how we can turn on or off the login section. And so I mentioned that you just about always are going to want the login section on, and it gives you a little disclaimer. Disabling the login section will force submissions to be anonymous. So that means that you wouldn't know who submitted that form submission if this was off. So you're pretty much always going to want to leave it on.
Okay.
Lastly, we have the login type. Well, not quite lastly, but we have the login type. So can anybody log in, meaning existing users or new users? Can only existing users take the form? So if you have an event and only current members can come to it, you would choose existing users, or can only new users log in for it? So can I only register for something if I'm a non-member?
Right, and exactly, because here we have basically everything is for members and non. We don't have anything exclusive, just for members. So it's all.
Perfect. And then you'll notice we have this login section for existing users. And then if you're not an existing user, you would see the login section for new users. In this case, they would give their email, which would at that time become their username, and then it's going to give them a pop-up to create a password. It can be as simple as the number 1. They'll put in their password, and at that time they have their username and password. The last toggle down here at the bottom, multiple submissions. So for something like a membership application, well, that's not a great example because this could be used for renewals as well. For a lot of your forms, you're really only going to want to allow 1 submission. So if you have an event registration, you don't want somebody to be like, did I register? I don't remember. I'm just going to do it again. Because then you're going to get multiple submissions for 1 user. You do have a lot of contribution and donation forms, though, and I would typically suggest that you do allow multiple submissions for those, because if somebody wants to come in and donate every week, well, then it's fine. So that would be something else that you would want to determine, do I want to allow my members to create multiple, or do I really just want them to be able to do 1 submission and not any more than that?
That's really good.
Now, one other kind of thing that I want to point out, so we've selected the properties for the login section. You can also click on this existing users field or the new users field. These fields are customizable, so if you want to change this text, you would just click on the field that you want to edit the text for, and you'd be able to select Edit Label Text. That's going to bring up an editor, just like when we were doing our content. And you can type in whatever text in this area that you would want to. So you can change the text in this area, in each of these fields.
Okay.
Now that's everything with the login section. I'm now going to move into the membership application section. So then they're going to select next, and they're going to come into the membership section. Same thing, they're going to see whatever name is on this membership is in this tab for the membership section. So you may want to spell this out. So just like what we did for the login, we can click the properties and see what things we can customize about our membership section. Here's the name of the label. We could call this membership application. It's going to update on our tab. So now this is what they would see. This is the title of the section. Enable the membership section. So yes, we want this turned on because we're using this form for membership. If you changed your mind and you're like, I don't want to use this for membership, you could just turn this off.
Okay.
But this is a membership application, so we're going to leave it on.
Yes.
Require membership section when available to the user. We definitely want to require this because if we don't, they can basically bypass the entire membership application. So we don't want them to be able to do that. So I'm going to toggle this on for you. You'll never really have to do this again, but just so you understand why I did that. Display application area for new users and prospects. Yes, this is for new users and prospects. Display area renewal area for users that are within their renewal period. So do we all have a renewal application? As of right now, it sounds like we do. Yes. You may end up wanting to create a smaller, more compact renewal application down the road, in which case we would do that, and then we could come back in here and say, nope, we really only need this membership application for new users and prospects. The other one, we would do the opposite. Nope, we only need the renewal area because it would be its own renewal application. All right, so that's all of the things that we can customize for this entire section of our form, but then we've got some different boxes. So choose a member type below to join as a new member. If you wanted to edit that text, we can click on that box and you can edit the label text. If you wanted to edit the renewal text, same thing. You could edit that text. And then same thing, if you want to, this would be for the organizational section, which you also have, you do have organizations, so this applies to you as well.
Okay.
The next item that we would do, we have our member type. So this is where they would see a drop down of all the member types that they can choose from to either join as or renew as. So all I'm going to do in this area is determine what member types they could choose from. My gut tells me they can probably choose any member type except for admin. Does that sound correct to you? And maybe lifetime?
I was going to say a lifetime, yeah, 'cause we don't have lifetime, exactly.
Perfect.
And that's why I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to ask you before when I was going in at the I or the pencil. The admin, I was a little confused. I thought maybe admin meant for the administrative area. I wasn't sure what admin was.
So admin is it would be like you, but then if you added somebody else who an ASA, which you're an ASA, which is like our super admin.
Okay.
If you wanted to add an additional admin, you could do so just putting them in the admin member type.
And I thought that would be Adrian. I really did. And that's why when I clicked everything, I made sure that I clicked all the buttons to be able to go in and edit, because my assumption was that was me. Okay, good.
Perfect. Yep, perfect. All right, that's going to bring us into the application itself. We're going to come back to this and add fields in here, but I want to go ahead and continue to do a review of the different sections that make up our form. So then we have a summary section. You'll always want to make sure that you completed the summary section for every form. So what fields do you want them to summarize? They're just going to go back, look at it again. And you can, as we add more fields to this form, there will be more fields that you would want to check for them to summarize at the end. Does that make sense?
When you say that I want them to summarize, I'm not sure what you're saying.
So if you've ever filled anything out online, you always go through, you put all your information in, and then you hit next. And then there's a page that comes up and it gives you name, email, physical address, all fields that you completed, and it provides answers so you can summarize it to make sure you provided accurate information.
Yes, okay.
So this is what that is. It's just bringing a page up for your members so that they can review the information they provided, confirm that it's correct, and then they're going to hit next and they'll be able to submit the form.
Makes perfect sense to me. Okay.
Awesome. So that's the summary section. The payment section, crucial that you always complete this. So once again, we're just selecting the properties field. You'll always want to make sure you have your payment processor selected. Here are those invoice templates, if you remember talking about those from our database training. And so we would select the appropriate invoice template. So which one of these would work for your membership app? It needs to be the new member. Looks like we have two new.
That's what you should, I guess, for this new members or new member.
We can go in and check to see which ones. And then the last toggle down here is, can they submit a form, have an invoice open for them that they don't have to pay right then, they can come back and pay it later, or do they have to pay at time of form submission?
Oh, no, they can pay later. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to turn this on and enable pay later with invoice. So that means that they can submit the form. There's an open invoice. They're going to get the invoice notifications that you completed when you filled out those invoice templates for whatever invoice template you selected. Mm-hmm. And then they'll be able to come back and pay later.
Okay.
The last section is the confirmation section, and this this is my favorite thing about our forms. I love our confirmation section. So after they submit the form, they're going to summarize it, they're going to apply their payment, and then they're going to hit done. And this confirmation page is going to pop up. Thank you for submitting your form. It's been submitted successfully. So we can click on this field, edit the confirmation page, and you can make this text a little bit more personalized. I would suggest that you do this for each of your forms. It's not mandatory.
Okay.
But there's also this merge data field at the bottom of our editor. You can use the merge data field to merge in information that they completed in the form, any of the fields that they provided, and anything that has to do with their invoice that was potentially created.
Okay.
This is really cool because if you data merge this information into the confirmation page, it acts as a receipt to the member.
Okay.
Not only is it great to have this filled out in the confirmation page, but if we select the properties for the confirmation section, we can also set up a confirmation email. So not only are they going to see the page pop up on their screen, they're also going to receive a confirmation email. Same thing. My suggestion would be to use these merge data fields to include things like their invoice number, their submission date, their submission total, first name, last name, what member type they selected. So some of these really basic fields.
Okay.
Now, not only is this going to merge the data in and send it to them, but you'll notice there's also this additional BCC recipient up here. So you can blind copy yourself on this confirmation and receive a copy of it in your email.
Oh,
The awesome thing about, yeah, this is awesome. If I was you guys, I'd be coming in the system every day going, what's changed? What's happened? What form has been submitted? What am I missing? And if there was nothing, I'd be like, is it not working right? Am I doing something wrong?
Right.
But if I'm getting these confirmations directly to my email, I'm not having to come in the system every day and look around to make sure I know what's going on. Instead, I'm being notified of what's going on every step of the way.
I definitely want that.
Cool.
Absolutely. I'll have
cool.
my email, be sure.
Yeah, so definitely come back in here after our training. So I want you to test our forms, but I would really love if you came in here, made sure that the summary section with the correct invoice template and the confirmation section was completed for each of your forms. It doesn't all have to be done today because that is a good bit of work, but you know, at some point in time, having those 3 things done for each form will really save you time in the long run.
Okay.
Okay. Now that is all the sections on our form.
Okay.
So you'll notice every time we've selected properties or we've selected a particular field on our form to edit, it brings us to this element properties tab. So element properties is anything we can change about a specific section or field on the form. Then we have our form settings tab, this tab to the far left. Anything we do under the form settings tab applies to the form as a whole. So element properties, changing things about specific fields or sections. Form settings applies to the entire form if we change something. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So underneath form settings, we have things like the form name. If you ever wanted to come in here and change the form name, you can always do that in this area.
Okay.
You can add a form description. Once again, form name and form description are internal. They're just to help you know what these forms are being used for.
Okay.
Form alias. So if you remember what the alias was when we talked about our content training, that comes after the / in your URL to create the full web address for this particular form. So if we went to ibwa.memberclicks.net / membership-application, we come directly to this form.
Oh, okay.
Form status, it's published. We can also change this to unpublished or archived from here. If there's a form expiration date, we can turn this on and choose a date that the form expires. That's great for events, but for your membership application, you probably don't want this turned on. Permissions. Permissions at the form settings level has to do with who can see this form.
Okay.
So if you have an event and lifetime members aren't allowed to come, you can uncheck the lifetime member. When they come in to take the form, it's going to say you do not have permission to complete this form.
That's great.
Date-based pricing and discount codes. We cannot use date-based pricing or discount codes for membership applications.
Okay.
The only thing that you can use date-based pricing or discount codes on would be general forms or event registration forms. It cannot communicate membership dues.
Okay.
These are a little bit tricky to set up without having a real-life example, but I want you to remember at some point in time you're going to be creating an event form and you're going to think back because you're going to go, oh, I really wish we could have an early bird rate, or I really wish we could implement a late fee for a late registration. So remember that, and if we're still together, you and I can work through it. You'll probably be with help at that point. You'll call them and they can walk you through how to use these. So basically, date-based pricing, early bird discounts, or late fee charges.
Okay.
Discount codes most oftentimes is used for event registration. So if you have sponsors, you can have your sponsors register for through the same event registration as your members, but give them a code. You can make your own code like sponsor 18, all caps. Give that code to them. they'll be able to put that code in at the end of the form. It'll provide the discounted price to them.
Okay.
Okay. The last item down here, forward URL. So when your members complete the form, they've done the summary, they've done the payment, in the confirmation page, they're going to hit finish. And by default, it takes them back to the main page of your website.
Okay.
If instead you want them to go to a page of more information about the event, or maybe to a page of membership benefits, you can put whatever URL here in this spot at the bottom, and this URL is just going to redirect them when they finish that form to where they go after they've completed the form.
Okay. Which like I said, I probably will just have the website in, because it just goes back if they want information on anything.
Yeah, and if you don't put in anything in here, like I said, it's just going to default them back to the home page. So you don't have to put anything in this area.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right, any questions on form settings?
Yeah, it's a lot, but as you went through each piece of it, it makes sense to me, but I know I'll have to probably do it step by step and look at it and just review it again and listen to your tape, just to kind of take it all in. And when I'm doing it on my own, I'm sure it'll come together, because it makes sense as you did each tab.
And it's definitely, I have found just 2 tips when you're creating a new form or when you're going through your forms, going through the form and creating the form in the exact same way every time will help, because it'll prevent you from skipping a step. Or sometimes I know like if you just look at all of this, it's like, whoa, what is going on here? But if you break it down step by step into individual sections, it starts to make more sense.
Okay.
All right, so we talked about element properties. Element properties is allowing us to change a specific thing about a field or a specific section. Form settings, whatever we do under the form settings tab, it's affecting the entire form. Last tab we have is adding form elements. So when you're ready to start adding fields to your form, you're going to add form elements. We're always going to add the form elements to the body of our section. In this case, it would be the membership application. It could also be the event registration section or a general section. We have a couple different types forms. Back to the attributes, built-ins and custom attributes we've talked about before a few times.
Yes, we have.
So one of the things that you ask is for the company name. The company name is, okay, so let me back up for just a second. If your member is registering as a company, the first thing they're going to do is fill out a profile for the company information. Then the second step is filling out information on the individual. The first individual created for the company is automatically created as the key contact.
Okay.
They have the ability to add additional linked profiles. So they can add multiple linked profiles on one membership application. So we've got the organization info. This is all about the company. Then the individual info. This is about the individuals linked to the company.
Okay.
So the first thing they're going to do is fill out the company information. You've asked for company name, organization name. We can click on that. It's going to allow me, there's my element property. So what can I change about this particular field? I'm going to change this to company name, because that's how you have it written on your membership application. And that's how it'll probably make most sense to your members.
Exactly.
Now the export name, anytime we edit a label, this be an export name. We always want to make sure we're updating the label onto the export name so that they match. You'll have the ability to export form submissions. The export name is going to be the column header for that column of information in your Excel spreadsheet. So if you don't have these two matching, you might not be so sure as to what that column of information is in your Excel spreadsheet that you could potentially export.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. The next item you ask for on your form is address. So I'm ready to add a form element. And if we think back, I know that address is a built-in attribute. It's something that we already had in our system for you guys. I'm going to take the address field and I'm literally just going to grab and drag it in. The form tells me exactly where I can put it because it gives me this green area.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you want the field to be required, underneath our element properties, making it required is an option.
Okay.
Now, not only do you probably want the address for your company, but you probably also want the address for your individual. So I'm going to go back to add form elements and add it for the individual as well.
Okay.
Same thing, I can make it required. This required looks a little bit different. It's a drop down, but same concept. There's a red asterisk going to pop up. You've also asked for phone numbers. So I know that's a built-in attribute. I'm going to add form elements, and I'm grabbing the phone number and dragging onto the form.
Okay.
Same thing.
An email, that's what I was thinking of next. Okay, so just drag it over.
Yep, just grabbing and dragging. We can add email as well. We're going to add a form element. Email. Make it required.
Awesome.
Same thing.
That's really great.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's a couple of other fields that I'm going to need to add for you, but I think you probably get the point of adding form elements for built-in and custom attributes, just grabbing and dragging in.
Yes.
Now, anytime we add built-in or custom attributes to our form, this is going to grab that information from what they fill out in the form and store it in their profile. Came in here and used this as a renewal application, it's going to auto-populate the information from their profile. So it works both directions.
Oh, okay.
Then we have form fields. Form fields will not be saved in the member's profile. They will only be saved in the form submission. So let's say you have a luncheon this month and you want to know, okay, is Bob going to have a ham sandwich, a turkey sandwich, or a veggie sandwich? You don't need to know 5 years from now that Bob had a turkey sandwich at the 2017 December luncheon, right?
Right.
You only needed to know that for the form submission, maybe to provide that information to your caterer or maybe to create an invoice for him. But you're never going to search on that to see what Bob had for lunch at the luncheon in 2017 in December. So we would use a form field to collect that information. These are all generic fields that you can customize to collect whatever information you need to collect.
Okay.
So some examples would be country. Country is literally just a drop down of all the countries. So this is always a little bit of a toughie to come up with an example for, but we could change this label where it says country. And it's moving a little slow on me. Here it comes. And I can change that label to read what country do you want the 2017 or 2018 conference to be held in, or what country have you recently visited? Here we go. So we could say, what country would you like to travel to for the 2018 conference? Silly example, but I don't really know you would use a drop down of all the countries. I haven't really found a great example for that one, but it's here if you ever need it.
Okay.
Date is just going to provide a blank field for them to add in a date. So what date do you want the 2018 conference to be held on?
Okay.
Or what's your birth date would be another good one. Although if you were asking what somebody's birth date was, you'd probably want a profile, so you would want to create a new custom attribute to capture that information, right?
Right.
File is just going to give them the ability to upload a file. So you could say, upload your resume. Always making sure we're updating the export name.
Okay.
Image, same thing, but they can upload an image. I'm going to come back to the number and selection set. These two are a little special.
Okay.
State is a drop down of all the states. A text box is just a blank text box where they can put in whatever they want to add in.
All right.
Going back to those two I skipped, number and selection set. Both of these can be used to create or collect money, so they're monetary values.
Okay.
So number, traditionally, it could just collect a number without, this number field cannot collect any special characters or spaces. So what's your social security number? I don't think you would ever ask that, but if you wanted to, if you needed to for some reason, that would be a great example.
Okay.
But I also mentioned that this could be a price field. So notice there's this new toggle that we haven't seen yet called price field. We can toggle in, and it's giving us a times $1. So this could be, how many tickets do you need for the upcoming conference?
Right.
Tickets aren't going to be $1. Down here, we can show how much those price per units are. So maybe they're $75 each. It's going to do whatever amount, however many tickets they put in, times 75, and that will be the line item on your invoice.
Oh, okay.
Now, what I used often for you, how much would you like to donate?
Yeah. I know Corey in government relations would love that.
So this one, we've got two options for this particular form field. It can also be a currency input. This literally means they can just put in however much money they want to donate or however much money they want to give you.
Okay.
Now, anytime you use a field to collect money, you're always going to want to edit the payment processor and revenue account, because you need to tell the system what revenue account your money's going into, what bucket, and you always need to have an invoice line item. So you don't want the invoice to read number. You would want it to read like donation total.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Selection set, and I've only got about 4 minutes left. I'm going to try to wrap this up. Selection set, same thing. So let's use our sandwich example here. What lunch option would you prefer?
Okay.
There's that price field.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You can add your selections, option limits, based pricing. So you could have a ham sandwich. We said turkey, veggie. So if somebody wants a ham sandwich, maybe they're paying $10. Turkey, they're paying $10. Veggie, they only have to pay $8.
Very, very nice.
And then limit, let's say your caterer says, well, I only have enough ham to make 50 ham sandwiches, but I can make an unlimited number of turkey and veggie. We're going to put that limit in. The second that ham is chosen for the 50th time, that selection will be grayed out, so nobody else will be able to select it.
Okay.
This is really great if you guys have conferences or events with a limited number of seating.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, we always need to edit the payment processor and revenue account. We do have member type pricing.
Okay.
Member type pricing means that here are all those member types. Maybe all your members only have to pay 10, 10, and 8 for the sandwiches, but if somebody's a non-member, they have to pay 15, 15, and 12.
Okay, so neat.
So if I'm logged in as a prospect or public, I'm only going to see prospect or public pricing. I will not see the member type pricing.
Okay.
And that's everything for that.
You can do just so much with the system. I'm just so elated.
It can do a lot, which I know can feel a little bit overwhelming, but it can, and you can always call in and say, I need to make this happen, and we can give you the exact instructions on how to make it happen.
I was thinking, I know a lot, but I said probably a year from now when I can probably go into everything on my own, it'll be great. I know I'll probably make some calls at the beginning, but I'm so happy.
I have one more tab I want to get through, and this is really easy. This is it's the presentation tab. This is just all about how the form presents itself. I mentioned in the beginning when we were creating our form, we can select the different bodies of form that we were going to create. So if we mess that up, we can always grab the events section and add the events section to our form, or there's the general section.
Okay.
Now I don't need these, so I'm going to go back into my properties and delete these out. Okay. In addition, horizontal line, it's just a separator, so we can add horizontal line anywhere we want to on our form. Whoops. It's just going to separate sections of the form.
Okay.
A label, think of a label as just a text box. So this is where you could add descriptions or directions or disclaimers. I spelled that wrong, that's okay. So you can put whatever text in this box that you want to add in, and it's going to add it to your form.
Okay.
Page breaks, they're usually built in. Here's an example of one, but if you are creating a general form, maybe it's a survey with 20 questions, you might want to add a couple of page breaks so your members aren't scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, but instead they can complete 5 questions and hit next. Complete 5 questions and hit next.
Okay.
And then last space. It's just another example of a separator.
Okay.
And that is everything. Just in time.
Well, I have a lot, you're right on time, I have a lot to do because I'm going to, like I said, work on the forms training, and then I'm going to go back from our last class and work on a little bit of the stuff we spoke about previously. So
yeah.